Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is our program, Foreign Office, and I'm Alexandr Domrin. We have a really special guest today, one of my American friends. We got acquainted not so long time ago, but it's already our third program, the first program on Foreign Office. Welcome. This is Sam Dickson. Please tell us a few words about yourself. Please tell us about your first visit to Russia.
Well, I'm a lawyer. I've written a few things. I have been a speaker at many nationalistic gatherings. I have practiced law for a long time. I started practicing law in 1974, and I am now running a hotel. And this is my first visit to Russia. I am not surprised what I see. I came here with a very positive view of Russia, and that positive view has been confirmed.
And you also speak Russian a little bit.
Немножко.
Немножко.
Когда я был мальчиком, у меня была русская учитель. Она была как вторая мать для меня. И она была белорусская, она работала с Белой армией. Ее зовут Наталья Алексеевна Беклемишина. Это башня, Кремль, Беклемишина башня, это ее семья, и ее двоюродный брат был вашим патриархом, Алексис.
Amazing, absolutely amazing, and the world is so small.
Yes.
Could you please tell us a few words about that conservative forum that you attended? It was in St. Petersburg. What was it about?
Well, I think it was about brotherhood and peace. It was the complete opposite of what the American media is saying it was about. It was about the need to prevent conflict between Russia and the United States, to avoid any more of the Peloponnesian Wars, like the two that we had in the last century that devastated our common European civilization and race.
What's wrong with our two countries? What's wrong with foreign policy of President Obama? Why do you understand this kind of things, and why many of your compatriots don't?
Well, I think it's a question of education and experience. It's a question of learning not to believe the government. You Russians, history has kept a very hard school for you Russians. Sophocles, the great Greek playwright, said in Oedipus Rex, "All praise to Zeus, who setting man upon the path of mortal life, made this a timeless law, that man shall learn by suffering." The Russian people have not been crippled by their suffering. They've been ennobled by their suffering, and they have been made wise by their suffering. My people are young people. They've had a very easy existence. They started out as an island people in England and Scotland, protected from Europe by the English Channel. They came to America, where their only opponents were very weak Indians. And they've had a very easy existence, and this has made them arrogant, made us arrogant and self-righteous. And it has also made us trust our government, whereas you in Russia have the experience of living under alien governments and learning to think for yourself.
I have visited your wonderful, absolutely wonderful, great country more than 60 times. And I wonder if you agree with me that traditionally we in Russia, we had more and still have more dissidents, those people with independent thinking, rather than your fellow Americans. Is it true?
It's very disappointing to me. I love my country, I love my people, but as a genuine patriot of my country and my people, I have to study their weaknesses too. I see massive cowardice in America. I see large passivity in America. People accept things that in normal times would provoke revolutions. I see very few people that I think are willing to die for their country or for their race. I see people who are intimidated by social ostracism, whereas the cemeteries here in Russia and Poland and Estonia and other countries in Central and Eastern Europe are full of people who were willing to die for their country and face much greater penalties for thinking for themselves. But my people, unfortunately, are very materialistic and very lacking in courage right now.
I see that you are a real patriot of your own country, of America. And you know, to be a real patriot means that you realize, you understand the weaknesses of your country, some deficiencies, and how to correct them. I can tell you the same things about my own country. It does not necessarily mean that I don't like Russia.
Exactly.
I love Russia. But at the same time, of course, what can we learn from you? What can we learn from America, we, the Russians?
Well, you can learn what to do. You can learn what not to do. And I'll take them in reverse order. You can learn not to allow your country to be colonized by aliens, to resist the efforts of the globalists and the anti-Russians to colonize you. You can learn to have a higher birth rate, to return these people who are not Russians to their homelands where they belong. You can learn to preserve your Russianness and not to allow your country to be settled. You can learn that from what we did not do. I feel uncomfortable giving any advice to Russians because I'm your guest. I do love your country.
I ask you.
I don't mean this in any way a criticism of your country. I think one of your greatest statesmen was Stolypin, the most effective minister of the last Tsar, who conducted the most intelligent land reform that I have found in reading history, and I've spent a life of reading history. He told the Tsar that the monarchy had to make a bet on the strong, and that it had to base itself upon a thriving peasantry rather than the aristocracy. And he put through a land reform by which the peasants were not given the land. They were afforded the opportunity to buy their land at a fraction of its value, financed by government bonds. This money compensated the nobility for the loss of the lands, and he understood that a gift of the land would not be appreciated. People don't appreciate what is given to them. As a result of this reform, Russian agriculture exploded in the last 10 years of the Tsar's reign. Sadly, when the anti-Russian Soviet system collapsed, there was nothing in place to carry out a similar reform and to ensure that property went into Russian hands. And those with international contacts and business skills were able to snatch up the wealth of Russia. What I would love to see in Russia would be a system of confiscating these foreign-owned businesses and encouraging Russian enterprise, encouraging the Russian people to enter into business for themselves, small business and big business.
Mm-hmm. There are many things that I would like to improve in my own country. But looking back at the 1990s, when Russia was a banana republic, it's way in a much better situation right now. And sadly, that's why Washington, D.C. and people in Washington, D.C. Don't like us anymore.
You're exactly right.
So they
hate you because, one of the reasons they hate you is because Putin, to some extent, took back the wealth that had been stolen by the oligarchs. And the American nomenclatura loved those oligarchs because they were their cousins and brothers. Oh. And they hate the fact that the ill-gotten wealth that they stole from the Russian people has been taken back.
One of those anti-heroes of mine, and I have been writing about them for more than 10 years, Larry Summers, Strobe Talbot, well, all those people, indeed, cousins of all those oligarchs who are still in power in Russia. It's never enough for us. We are always very radical, we, the Russians. So my problem, of course, is that, okay, well, Khodorkovsky got what he deserved. Why not Abramovich? Why not some other individuals? But at least we are moving in the right direction. Could you please tell me, me and our audience, about your favorite writers, authors, maybe scholars, who live in America who write in English, maybe sometimes they write also in Russian, who can give us here in Russia a better presentation of your country, a better picture of your country than what the New York Times is selling to us.
There's a book by a now deceased friend of mine named Wilmot Robertson called The Dispossessed Majority. You asked a question before we began of how it was that America was kidnapped or hijacked.
Hijacked.
This book will explain, is the best explanation. It's called The Dispossessed Majority. He also wrote a book called The Ethno-State that I also recommend. It may be difficult to get these books, but it's worth reading. He had a magazine called Instauration, which is available online. If you Google Instauration, which is Latin, a Latin word in English for Renaissance, you will find the whole text of all of these magazines that he published for about 20 years. I would also recommend Jared Taylor's books, who appeared also in your program. They also are very much worth reading.
Thank you very much. You know, when I criticize America, well, just like when I criticize Russia, I don't laugh, I cry. Just because my first visit to America happened back in 1991. I spent 2 months in Washington, D.C., and I didn't like it. And when I went to Iowa, the great state of Iowa, and I fell in love with your country and with your people in Iowa, I'm just lucky. I had a chance to see real America, but a lot of my compatriots didn't have a chance to understand your country better, and especially to love American people. And of course, well, take a look at all those cities, take a look at all those highways, take a look at all those great fields that you have in America. Who is in charge of them? Who has been keeping them alive? Great, talented, hard-working American people. Sam, maybe a few words to our audience directly. Your final words in our program today, but I really hope that it was not it was our first meeting in this studio, but not the last one.
I hope so too. Do skorого свидания. Skorого свидания.
Absolutely, yes.
And I would say, this is before I say any words of farewell. Have you ever seen a movie called Breaking Away?
No.
That movie, if you can see the movie Breaking Away, it's a rare movie that shows the real America, whereas usually what you see from Hollywood, what you see of America in general, is seen through the eyes of Hollywood and New York, which is run by people who are not real Americans. And so I recommend that movie, Breaking Away. It's a comedy. It's about real Americans. But the people of Russia, I would say that our people are similar. I believe that the Russian people are a good-hearted people. I don't believe they are a cruel people. To some extent, you are a wiser people than my people because you've had a longer history and you have suffered more. And as Solzhenitsyn said, you have been ennobled rather than crippled by your suffering. The American people also, my people, are a good-hearted people. Unfortunately, they also are a naive people. My last words to you would be, bear up, be strong. Stand fast, develop your own country, develop your own industries, find a way to train your own people to go into business. Do not ever believe that it is possible to compromise with the ideology that runs America. There can be no compromise with the ideology that runs America. There could be compromise and cooperation with the American people, but the interests of the American people play very little role in my country. Instead, we have a government that is driven by an ideology akin to the ideology that you suffered under Lenin and Stalin, an ideology that wants to impose itself on the entire world, as we saw in Ukraine when we heard the American Assistant Secretary of State speaking with our ambassador in terms of who America was going to install to be president of what ought to be a sovereign country. Do not fool yourselves that by conceding, by removing political figures that the American media and government don't like, that you can ever conciliate and compromise with that ideology.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your final words, for your advice, for your kind heart. Well, I can see it, I can feel it in our studio. I'm absolutely sure that our viewers will also feel it.
I hope so. I have a very kind heart. I am without hatred of anyone.
Absolutely. It brings us to the end. This is the end of our program Foreign Office with Alexander Domrin. Please stay tuned.